it's me, and today I'm here with my March mid-month wrap-up. This is the first time I've really done a mid-month wrap-up. Like last month I also did like a wrap-up throughout the month, but that was for the contemporary thought specifically. But I thought that this month I would do a mid-month wrap-up because I've been reading a whole lot, and I know that if I'm going to wait until the end of the month, like the wrap-up is gonna be like forever long. Like I just don't want to put that on you. I'm doing a mid-month wrap-up where I'll be talking about the first 8 books out in the month of March. Everything for like stats and everything will be included in my end of the month wrap-up, just so you know. Let's just get started. The first book I read this month is Home by Lisa Allen-Agostini. This is a gal I got from NetGalley, and it's about a girl who lives in I don't remember exactly where. I feel so bad. Okay, now I have to think of it. I think she lives, like, she's from the Caribbean, but that could be warm. She's like from Middle America, and basically she has been having struggles with mental health, and it has reached to a certain point where her mom sent her up to her aunt who lives in Canada to be able to like take care of everything better. And yeah, the way is basically her just finding a place in Canada and also coming to terms with her mental illness, because it's very, like, it's looked upon very differently in Canada than where she's from. And also her aunt is married to another woman and is a lesbian, and like she, like where she was raised, like not a lot of people were gay, like openly gay, so it's also something that she has to internalize. And yeah, this book I gave 4 out of 5 stars. It is a very short book. I think it's like 160 pages, so it's very short, but it packs a punch. I really like the way everything was discussed. I think the main character is 14 years old, so she's on the younger side of YA, and I think for being from more the younger audience, I feel like everything was discussed very well. I feel like often when things like mental health are portrayed for a younger audience, it's kind of more glossed over the bad things, but I feel like this book truly went into it, and it showed the good and the bad of everything, and I really liked it. I really liked the discussions around that. I also think that eventually everything was handled very respectfully. Like when it comes to the main character coming to terms with the sexuality of her aunt, like she doesn't really have a problem with it, but it's just like a thing that she doesn't fully comprehend. So she asks respectful questions to her aunt and her girlfriend of wife. I don't remember if they're married or not, but anyway, just like very clear communication, and I think that's a great thing to put out towards like that younger audience, because it shows them how to have those conversations if they don't understand things very well. People refrain from them like being rude, everything, and I really like that. I think that everything, like from discussions about like sensitive topics, were handled so well, and I really like that. Also, I really like the main character, what she mentioned. I think she can be relatable for like a lot of people, and I liked the family dynamics in this book as well. It's very complicated, but it's done very well. I just kind of my only problem with this book is that I would have liked if some things were a little bit more fleshed out. Just towards the end, there were some things that I was just like, we have been like talking and discussing all these things very strongly, and then this thing we're kind of just like going over pretty quickly. I just wish that was a little bit like delved out a little bit. Then the next book I read is Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski. I got from the library and it's back in the library, so there you go. This is a prequel novel to the Witcher series. It takes place around like the same time as The Last Wish short story collection, and it's about Geralt, who's a Witcher. Witcher is like a mutated human that fights monsters basically, and this book specifically is mainly about Geralt like being at this place, and at this place like his swords get stolen, and like nobody really knows who stole it, and it's kind of like him trying to get the swords back, and also like other stuff happening. I give this book 1 out of 5 stars. If you've been following my channel for, I don't really know if I've talked about 1 stars on this channel before. I don't really know, but 1 stars for me are basically books that don't register in my brain, because it happens occasionally that I read a book and I read every single word but no word safe up here. I just feel bad giving out another star rating other than 1, because I can't really talk about the content, like the contents of the books, because I don't remember. I just generally don't. And this was one of those which I kind of found sad, because I never really had that with the witch world, and I really like the world and like these characters, and we spent a lot of time with Gerald in this book, and I feel like my complaint for like the main series is that we didn't really spend enough time with him, and we spent a lot of time with him in this book, and I wanted to enjoy this, but I didn't really. I do think it has some outsider perspectives, and I think those were blended in very well. The only thing I really can remember is that I just don't think this book was necessary, because we don't learn anything new about this world, and also we know how all these characters will wind up that we already knew, because they're in the main series. And yeah, I just think that if Andrzej Sapkowski wanted to write a spin-off for the series, I think there were so many other different topics that I would have been more interested in, and yeah, didn't do that. He did something kind of useless, in my opinion. Then the next book I read is another one I got from the library and I had to return already, and that's Inspection by Josh Malerman. It takes place in this world, which is very similar to our own, but there's like an experiment going on, and in this experiment, basically, boys are put in like one tower and girls in another tower, and they're separated for like their entire lives, from like since birth, and they don't know that the other gender exists. And kind of the idea behind that is that the thing that keeps away geniuses is the other sex, and basically having sexual desires is the thing that distracts people from becoming geniuses, so that's why they're split apart. We follow a boy who lives in this tower, and who's starting to question everything that is going on, as just stuff happening that don't really add up, and he's just questioning things. And at the same time, the same thing is happening with one of the girls in the girl tower, but we don't get to her perspective like much later, just so you know. Because I always thought it was going to be like dual perspective, like pretty equally, and it does get that. That was like the ending, but it takes a while for it to get to the girl perspective. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, which I wasn't really expecting, because I didn't really like Bird Box, and that is a very well loved book by this author. I picked up Inspection because it sounded very interesting, and I do stand by that fact. It's a very interesting book, so I picked it up, and I ended up really enjoying it. It's more of a slower book in a way, because that's the complaint I've seen a lot, that people just thought it was like too slow and not really a lot happening, but I didn't mind that. I liked just slowly discovering what's going on in this experiment and how it came to be and everything that's going on, and I like that it like moved slowly, and then in the end it got very action packed. But I like that everything just revealed itself bit by bit, and I really like that. I do think this book is officially a horror book, which I don't really agree with. It's not that horror-y. I also really liked our main characters, the boy and the girl, and just like the set of characters we followed. I thought that was really interesting. I also liked that we got more than just the perspective from the boy and the girl, which I was expecting to just have this perspective, but we get some perspectives. We get perspectives from the people who are leading the experiment, and then from one other person. I really liked having those perspectives, because it helped give more of an insight into how the experiment came to be and how it is working and stuff, more than those 2 characters could ever really like find out on their own. And I really like that as well. Kind of my only problem I had with this book is that it kind of neglects queer people. It doesn't really think about what if one of these kids is gay, what if one of these kids is trans, which seems weird, because they seem to have thought of everything. Like, we get a lot of explanations, like, be careful, this might happen, make sure this doesn't happen, like these are ways to prevent that this could happen and stuff like that, but they never discuss the possibility of one of the boys or the girls being gay, one of the boys or the girls being trans. Like, they never really get into that. And the next book I ended up reading is The Complete Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. I'm so sorry I pronounced that one, but I looked it up and it was not really very clear. But it's about the author herself. It's a graphic memoir, basically about her growing up during the Islamic Revolution in Iran, and her parents sending her away for, like, I don't remember what age, but it's like towards the end of high school and college. She's in Europe, and eventually she returns back home. Just about a story growing up during this like this troubling time, and also feeling the guilt of being away from that, and her struggling to fit in Europe. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Again, I really like this book. I think I've heard a lot of things about this graphic memoir, and I just haven't really gotten around to picking it up, even though I really wanted to. And it's always praised for being brilliant, and I think it deserves that. I think it deserves very much the hype that it gets, because it's very good. It's very well written, like the storytelling is done very well. The art style is also very simplistic, like you can see. But I feel like at times it does, like, she does something like special with it. I don't really want to give an example of that, but like she does something a little bit more artistic to convey more of her feelings at the time as stuff were changing and happening, and I really like that. I don't know why I give this 4 stars and not 5 stars, it just didn't really feel like a 5-star book. Then the next book that I read is The House of Hades by Riordan. This is the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series, which is a spin-off series to the Percy Jackson series, but basically this series starts off with Jason, who finds himself in a bus, completely memory wiped, and he doesn't remember anything, but surrounding him is a guy who claims to be his best friend and a girl who claims to be his girlfriend, and he doesn't have a memory of either of them. And stuff happens and they end up in Camp Half-Blood, where they have a problem themselves because Percy is missing. And the series is a mix between Greek and Roman mythology. I give it a 5 stars. I think this is the best book in the series so far. For most of the time, the characters are split up, and I really like the way certain divisions happened. I think this book coupled a lot of characters together that didn't really have a lot of interactions together before, and it gave them a really good relationship, and it developed other relationships that were already going on. I feel like this book did a lot of building for the last book, because our characters were all put in situations that brought out their weaknesses and only they could defeat it, and it's really made all of our characters stronger and more confident, and I feel like we have all the characters are like developed to the fullest at this point, and they can go into that final battle perfectly now. I really liked where this book went. They said it's a build-up for the next book, but also stands very strongly on its own. Well, not on its own, you need the series, but I feel like it's not a filler book. A lot of stuff happens in this, and a lot of revelations get made. Like I said, our characters grow a lot, and yeah, I'm just excited to see how this will turn out. I know the last book doesn't really have the best reviews compared to the rest of the series, but I'm still very excited to go into that book. The next book I read is The Genius of Women by Janice Kaplan. This is another gallery I received from that gallery. This is a non-fiction book about how basically whenever we're asked to think about like geniuses, most of them come up with men and not females. Why throughout history most geniuses were men and not women, and it's about the women in history that got neglected. It's about women now making a stance in previously and still male dominated careers. I give this book 2 out of 5 stars. I don't really like this one. I don't think, and this sounds very harsh, that this author was the right author to write this book, which sounds dumb because you think in a non-fiction like it doesn't matter, like anyone can present facts. I think what really happened with this book is eventually the concept behind this book was very great. That's why I requested it, and she does make some good points, but those good points get repeated over and over and over and over again, and it made the book just very repetitive and boring. And then all the other points she made were just based on either theories that she was pretending to be facts, or just her being angry at things that don't really matter, and her just being bitter and very condescending as well, and I don't really like it. The next book I read is The Iron Daughter by Kagawa. This is the 2nd book in the Iron Face series, and the first book is about a girl named Megan who has always lived like this pretty normal life, and now around her 16th birthday, I believe, a lot of strange things are like happening, but like very small things that she thinks like, oh, it's nothing, until one day her little brother starts acting weird and very violently, and she's like, this is not my brother. And when all this stuff are happening, because it's happening on her birthday, her best friend comes in, and she's like, and he's like, oh, that's a changeling. That's an issue. And turns out that she is the illegitimate daughter to a king of the fairy court, and then her best friend is a fae who basically was sent like the human realm by her father to keep an eye on her and make sure that she never gets into the fairy realm because there's a lot of people that wouldn't like her, because her little brother gets a changeling. Our main character decides to go into the fairy realm to find back her brother. This is a binding above the first 2 books, that's why it's so big. I gave The Iron Daughter 3 out of 5 stars, and I think this was written in 2010, so it has a lot of like basic things in it, and I think it's not really a book that you can go back to and like still think like this is an amazing fantasy. It's the test of time, but I do think it is a very entertaining novel and very addicting and very quick to read and easy and just fun. The reason I took some stars is because the beginning was very interesting, the end was very action-packed, like the whole middle chunk just was not a lot really happened and was pretty boring. Also, our main character is so whiny, especially that was like the first half of this book, and she's so incredibly whiny and dumb. And I had this problem in the first book as well, and I just thought she was dumb and making dumb decisions. It does have a whole lot of tropes, like very, very many tropes. So if you don't really like reading books with tropes you've seen before, maybe don't read this, because I don't think it does really anything super special with those tropes. But I don't know, I just think it's fun. The last book I have for today is The Night Country by Lisa Allen-Agostini. This is the sequel to The Hazelwood. The Hazelwood is about a girl named Alice who, together with her mom, has always been on the run for something and she doesn't really know what it is. And her grandmother is famous for writing these dark fairy tales and kind of just being a hermit, because her grandmother lives in like this big estate called Hazelwood and like nobody really gets in there. One day Alice and her mother get this letter that basically says that the grandmother has died and they have inherited the estate, and Alice thinks okay, everything is fine now until her mother gets kidnapped, and everything is kind of pointing towards the fact that her mother was kidnapped by characters of these dark fairy tales, and basically Alice has to try to find her mom and figure things out. This is a sequel to that book. It takes place I think it takes place 2 years after Hazelwood, and it also has like a dual perspective of the guy in the main book. It doesn't come in till like pretty late in the book, but it says that we follow him on the back. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't really like the Hazelwood, but I wanted to pick this up because I loved that guy character and I thought he would be more of a prevalent factor in this book. I didn't. I actually thought this was just going to be about him. Was very disappointed to learn that he was not. It was not. So it's like, oh, so it's just gonna be like 50-50. I don't like that either. But it wasn't. I do stand by the fact that I think his sections were more interesting, simply because they spent more time in the like magical world of the series, and that's the thing I'm most interested in. I had the problem with the Hazelwood. I thought that the whole book was boring until like the end when they get into the magical section. And this book has normal world and then like magical like sprinkled throughout it whenever we follow the guy's perspective. And again, I really like those magical things, but I thought the rest was very boring. That is all I have for you to talk about today. If you read any of these books, let me know in the comments below what you thought of them, as well as what is the last book you've read. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Okay? Here I am again, the same old situation. What does the